I was 8 years into what I thought was a perfect marriage when I found those texts on my wife Amanda's phone. I had only been fixing her cracked screen, not snooping, but there they were. Messages from someone saved as A.P. My stomach dropped as I read words meant only for lovers. I couldn't believe Amanda, my college sweetheart, was sharing intimate conversations with Adam Parker from her marketing firm. The ground beneath my feet suddenly felt unstable. Before I tell you how my perfect life crumbled and how I rebuilt it, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt betrayal's sting. My parents came to America with nothing but dreams of giving their children better opportunities. As their firstborn son, I felt the weight of their sacrifices every day. I worked hard, became the first in my family to graduate college, and was determined to make them proud. That's where I met Amanda, in a coffee shop during my final semester. She was vibrant, ambitious, and her laugh could light up the entire room. I was instantly captivated. After dating for 2 years, we had a beautiful wedding surrounded by friends and family. We promised to build a life together based on trust, respect, and unwavering love. I still remember the way she looked at me that day, like I was her everything. I believed her completely. The years that followed were good to us. My career in software engineering took off, and I climbed the corporate ladder faster than I had anticipated. Amanda thrived as a marketing executive at a prestigious firm downtown. We saved diligently and bought our dream house in the suburbs, a colonial-style home with a big backyard where we planned to raise children someday. From the outside, we were living the American dream. The first changes in Amanda were subtle, so subtle that I questioned if I was imagining things. She started working late more frequently, often coming home well after 9 p.m. with the scent of wine on her breath. She bought new clothes, more stylish, more revealing than her usual professional attire. She changed her phone password, something we had never done before in our relationship. The physical distance grew between us. Nights that were once filled with conversation and intimacy became silent as she scrolled through her phone, smiling at messages I wasn't privy to. When I would reach for her in bed, she would often turn away, claiming exhaustion from work. I began to doubt myself. Was I being paranoid? Was I just insecure because of her success? Was this just a normal evolution in a long-term relationship? I wanted to believe the best in her and us. Then came the business trip that changed everything. Amanda was supposed to be presenting at a conference in Chicago. She texted me updates about her presentation, the hotel, the other attendees. But that evening, while scrolling through social media, I saw a mutual friend had posted photos from a restaurant downtown, our city downtown, not Chicago. And there in the background of one photo was Amanda seated at a corner table with a man I didn't recognize. When she returned, I casually mentioned seeing the photo. Without missing a beat, she claimed the conference had been canceled at the last minute, but she didn't want to disappoint me since I had been so supportive of her presenting. She said she had dinner with a potential client instead. The lie came so easily to her that it made me question every truth I thought I knew about our relationship. Something wasn't right, and deep down I knew it. I decided to pay closer attention to the woman I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. As the weeks passed, Amanda began mentioning a new colleague named Adam Parker with increasing frequency. He was the marketing director who had recently transferred from their New York office. According to Amanda, he was brilliant, innovative, and had already transformed their department with his fresh ideas. There was an animation in her voice when she spoke about him that I hadn't heard in some time. Her phone became an extension of her hand. It dinged constantly with notifications, and she would smile at the screen in a way that made my stomach tighten. When I would enter a room, she would quickly turn the screen away or put the phone face down. The secretive behavior only intensified my suspicions. One rainy Thursday, I found a man's jacket in our car that wasn't mine. When I brought it inside and asked Amanda about it, she explained that Adam's car had broken down and she had given him a ride home. The jacket must have slipped off the back seat. Her explanation seemed reasonable enough, but the unfamiliar cologne lingering on the fabric told a different story. My 34th birthday arrived during this period of mounting suspicion. Amanda had organized a dinner at my favorite steakhouse, inviting our closest friends. Throughout the evening, she checked her phone, repeatedly stepping away from the table to take calls that couldn't wait. I watched her through the restaurant window as she paced the sidewalk, laughing into her phone with an intimacy that used to be reserved for me. When she returned to the table, she claimed it was work emergencies, but the flush in her cheeks told me otherwise. A week later, Amanda received a package containing an expensive watch. When I asked about it, she said it was a thank you gift from a satisfied client. I had been in marketing long enough to know that corporate gifts rarely came in the form of $1,000 timepieces. After weeks of torment of second-guessing myself and being gaslighted about my concerns, I made a decision I never thought I would make in my marriage. While Amanda was in the shower, I checked our phone records. What I found confirmed my worst fears. Hundreds of texts to one number, often sent in the middle of the night or during times she had told me she was in meetings. I felt sick violating her privacy this way, but the mounting evidence was impossible to ignore. The woman I had built my life with was living a double life, and I needed to know the truth no matter how painful. The final confirmation came on a night when Amanda told me she had to work late to prepare for a major presentation. Driven by an instinct I couldn't ignore, I drove past her office at 8 p.m. Her car wasn't there. Acting on a hunch, I drove to an upscale restaurant across town that she had mentioned Adam particularly enjoyed. There in the parking lot was her car parked next to an unfamiliar luxury sedan. I parked across the street and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. An hour later, they emerged together. I watched from a distance as Adam brushed a strand of hair from her face, his hand lingering on her cheek. I saw my wife lean into his touch, saw the way she looked at him, the same way she used to look at me. They kissed in the parking lot, unhurried and familiar, before departing in separate cars. The drive home was a blur of anger, hurt, and disbelief. I arrived home before her and pretended to be asleep when she quietly entered our bedroom. She slipped under the covers and turned away from me, the scent of unfamiliar cologne clinging to her skin. I lay awake all night, replaying years of memories, wondering how many had been tainted by deception. By morning, I had made my decision. This charade had gone on long enough. I would confront Amanda with what I knew, and I would do it in a way that left no room for more lies. Saturday morning arrived with painful clarity. I had barely slept, but a strange calm had settled over me. I knew what needed to be done. I got up early and prepared Amanda's favorite breakfast: blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, crispy bacon, and freshly squeezed orange juice. I also baked a cake, a simple vanilla one with buttercream frosting. The irony wasn't lost on me. I set the table nicely, complete with fresh flowers I had bought the day before. Amanda came downstairs, surprise evident on her face. She looked genuinely touched by the gesture, which only made what was to come more difficult. We sat down to eat, and I asked about her late night at work. I was giving her one final chance to come clean. "Oh, you know how these presentations are," she said between bites of pancake. "Every detail has to be perfect. Adam is particularly demanding about the client pitch decks." The mention of his name from her lips sent a chill through me. "Speaking of Adam," I said, keeping my voice steady, "you two seem to be working together quite a bit lately." A flash of something, worry perhaps, crossed her face before she composed herself. "He's the marketing director. We all work closely with him." I nodded, taking a sip of my coffee. "Is that all he is to you? A director you work with?" Her fork paused midway to her mouth. "What are you asking me, Pedro?" "I'm asking if you're having an affair with Adam Parker." Amanda laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's ridiculous. Where is this coming from?" Instead of responding, I reached for my phone and placed it on the table between us. I had compiled everything. The phone records highlighting the hundreds of texts and calls at suspicious hours, photos I had taken of them together at the restaurant, a timeline of the lies she had told me over the past months, even a picture of the jacket, with cologne still lingering on it. I watched her expression change as she scrolled through the evidence. First shock, then denial, and finally, when she realized the extent of what I had discovered, anger. Not remorse, not shame, but anger at being caught. "You've been spying on me," she accused, pushing the phone away. "I've been discovering the truth about my marriage," I replied. "Were you ever going to tell me?" She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This is an invasion of privacy. I can't believe you would stoop so low. Lower than betraying your wedding vows, lower than lying to my face for months." My voice remained calm, which seemed to frustrate her even more. She paced the kitchen, running her hands through her hair. When she finally spoke again, what she said would forever change how I viewed her. Amanda laughed, a cold, dismissive sound that bore no resemblance to the warm laugh I had fallen in love with years ago. "You know what, Pedro, women can have their cake, and eat it too now." I stared at her, unable to comprehend the cruelty behind her words. "Times have changed," she continued, gaining confidence in her justification. "You're so old-fashioned with your ideas about marriage and fidelity. Adam gives me excitement, passion, intellectual stimulation that you stopped providing years ago. So instead of talking to me about what you needed, you decided to cheat. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She shrugged, as if my pain was an inconvenience to her. I wanted both. The stability of marriage with you, and the excitement of being with Adam. And honestly, I didn't think you would ever find out. You've always been so trusting, so naive. Her words cut deeper than any knife could. This woman standing before me was unrecognizable, a stranger wearing my wife's face. Besides, she added with a smirk, what are you going to do about it? Leave me. We both know you need me more than I need you. Your family adores me. Our friends are mostly my friends. This house is as much mine as it is yours. You won't throw everything away over this. The arrogance in her voice, the absolute certainty that I would continue to accept her betrayal because I had no other option, left me speechless. A deafening silence filled our kitchen as her words hung in the air between us. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The pain was still there, but alongside it arose a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I stood up slowly, my chair making no sound against the floor. Without a word, I walked to the refrigerator and took out the cake I had baked earlier. Amanda watched with confusion as I placed it on the counter, cut a perfect slice, and set it on a plate in front of her. Her eyes darted between the cake and my face, trying to decipher my intentions. You're right, I said, my voice steadier than I expected it to be. Here's your cake. Enjoy it. Without waiting for her response, I walked upstairs to our bedroom. I pulled out the suitcase we had used for our honeymoon in Italy and began methodically packing my essentials, clothes for a week, toiletries, important documents, and a framed photo of my parents. I could hear Amanda's footsteps as she followed me upstairs, her confusion turning to concern as she realized what I was doing. Pedro, what are you doing? She demanded from the doorway. Exactly what it looks like, I replied, without looking up from my packing. I'm leaving. Don't be dramatic, she said, her tone shifting from arrogant to nervous. We can talk about this. I was just upset that you invaded my privacy. I continued packing, not acknowledging her attempts to minimize what had happened. Pedro, stop, her voice cracked slightly. I didn't mean what I said downstairs. Adam doesn't mean anything to me. It was just a stupid fling. I zipped up my suitcase and finally looked at her. The woman who minutes ago had been so confident in her betrayal now looked panicked. It was remarkable how quickly her narrative changed when she realized I wouldn't play the role she had assigned me. The problem, Amanda, is that I believe what you said downstairs was the most honest you've been with me in months. You meant every word. You wanted the cake, the excitement of your affair, while still eating it too, keeping the stability of our marriage. Well, congratulations. The cake is all yours now. I picked up my suitcase and moved toward the door. Amanda blocked my path, tears now streaming down her face. You can't leave me, she pleaded, grabbing my arm. I love you. I made a mistake. We can go to counseling. I'll stop seeing Adam immediately. Please, Pedro. The rapid transformation from arrogance to desperation would have been almost impressive if it hadn't been so clearly manipulative. I gently removed her hand from my arm. I've already stayed too long, I said quietly. I should have left the first time I confirmed you were lying to me. But I won't make that mistake again. Where will you go? She asked, her voice small. That's no longer your concern, I replied. I'll contact you about arrangements for the rest of my things. I walked past her down the stairs and out the front door of the home we had built together. I could hear her calling my name as I placed my suitcase in the trunk of my car, but I didn't look back. As I drove away, I called my friend Jack, who immediately offered his guest room for as long as I needed it. That night, as texts from Amanda alternated between threats about what would happen if I left her and pleas for me to come home, I did something I hadn't done in months. I turned off my phone, closed my eyes, and slept peacefully through the night. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal consultations and emotional processing. On Jack's recommendation, I met with Diana Marshall, a divorce attorney known for her expertise in handling infidelity cases. She listened carefully to my story and the evidence I had gathered, assuring me that while divorce was never easy, I had solid grounds to protect myself in the proceedings. Document everything, Diana advised me. Every interaction, every text, every email. Massachusetts may be a no-fault state, but judges still consider conduct when making determinations about asset division. Meanwhile, Amanda had launched a campaign to control the narrative among our friends. According to her version, I had become controlling and paranoid, driving her to seek emotional support elsewhere. Some mutual friends believed her story and distanced themselves from me. Others who had seen the subtle changes in our relationship dynamic over time reached out to offer support. Telling my parents was one of the hardest conversations of my life. They had embraced Amanda as a daughter, and the news of her betrayal hit them almost as hard as it had hit me. My mother cried, not just for my pain but for the grandchildren she had hoped would come soon. My father, a man of few words, simply said, "You deserve better, son. We raised you to recognize your worth." 2 weeks after I left, Amanda showed up at my workplace. She created such a scene in the lobby that security had to escort her out. That evening I filed for a temporary restraining order, not because I feared for my safety but because I needed to establish clear boundaries that she seemed unwilling to respect. When the divorce papers were delivered to her, Amanda's behavior grew more erratic. She emptied our joint bank accounts, taking nearly $40,000 we had saved together. Her action backfired when Diana filed emergency motions, and the judge ordered the funds frozen until proper division could be determined. The judge also noted Amanda's behavior in the court record, which Diana assured me would work in my favor. During our court-mandated mediation session, Amanda arrived with Adam in tow, introducing him as her support person. It was clearly meant to hurt me to show me they were now officially together. Instead, I felt a strange sense of pity watching them together, knowing their relationship was built on a foundation of lies and betrayal. Throughout the proceedings, I maintained my composure, refusing to engage in the emotional warfare Amanda seemed determined to wage. When she would make disparaging comments or attempt to provoke me, I would simply look to Diana, who would handle the situation professionally. My restraint seemed to frustrate Amanda more than any reaction could have. After 3 grueling months, our divorce was finalized. The terms were fair, largely due to Diana's skillful representation and the evidence of Amanda's misconduct. We sold the house split, the proceeds divided our assets, and went our separate ways legally. As I signed the final papers in the courthouse, I felt a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and something unexpected, hope. For the first time in nearly a year, I could look toward the future without the shadow of betrayal hanging over me. The chapter of my life that included Amanda was finally closed. The initial weeks after the divorce were the hardest. I isolated myself in the small apartment I had rented, cycling through grief, anger, and self-doubt. Had I been insufficient as a husband? Were there signs I should have noticed earlier? Could I have prevented this somehow? The questions haunted me, keeping me awake at night and distracted during the day. On Jack's insistence, I started seeing Dr. Kimberly Jordan, a therapist specializing in recovery from relationship trauma. In our sessions, I began to understand that while marriages fail for many reasons, betrayal is a choice made by one partner, not a failure of the other. Amanda's decision to have an affair reflects her character, not yours. Dr. Jordan reminded me often, you can examine your contribution to the marriage's problems without taking responsibility for her choices. Slowly, I began rebuilding my life. I reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage, people who knew me before I became half of Pedro and Amanda. I threw myself into a challenging project at work, developing a software solution that earned recognition from senior management and resulted in a substantial bonus. My apartment gradually became a home filled with things that reflected my personality rather than compromises between two people. I hung my photography, a hobby I had abandoned years earlier, on walls painted colors I preferred. I cooked meals I enjoyed without considering someone else's preferences. These small acts of self-determination began to heal something fundamental inside me. 6 months after the divorce, I joined a support group for people recovering from infidelity. Sharing my story with others who truly understood the unique pain of betrayal was cathartic. More importantly, seeing people further along in their healing journey gave me hope that the raw wound in my heart would eventually scar over. One Wednesday evening, I was dining alone at a new restaurant downtown when I spotted them. Amanda and Adam were seated at a corner table, engaged in what appeared to be a tense conversation. Amanda looked up and saw me. Our eyes met briefly across the crowded room. I expected to feel something, anger, hurt, vindication, but instead I felt a surprising emptiness. She was now just a person from my past. What struck me most was how unhappy she looked. Despite getting everything she thought she wanted, freedom from our marriage, a relationship with Adam, there was none of the joy or excitement I remembered from our early years together. In that moment, I realized that despite everything I had lost, I had gained something precious: self-respect and the chance to build a life of genuine integrity. I went back to my meal, leaving the restaurant without acknowledging them further. On the drive home, I reflected on how far I had come from the devastated man who had discovered those text messages just a year earlier. The pain hadn't disappeared completely, but it no longer defined me. It took nearly a year before I felt ready to consider dating again. My promotion at work had come with increased responsibilities that kept me busy, and I had purchased a small but charming house not far from the city. It wasn't as large as the home I had shared with Amanda, but it was completely mine, filled with memories I had created on my own. My relationship with my family had deepened through the ordeal. My parents, who had always been somewhat reserved with their emotions, had shown me a depth of support I hadn't known they were capable of. My younger brother, who had recently moved to Boston for graduate school, became a regular visitor, filling my home with laughter I had sorely missed. When I finally decided to take a photography class at the local community center, I did it purely for myself, to reclaim a passion I had once loved. I never expected to meet someone like Sophia there. She was a pediatric nurse with a warm smile and an easy laugh that reminded me of simpler times. Unlike Amanda, who had always been calculating about her next career move, Sophia spoke about her work with genuine compassion for the children in her care. We started slowly, first as classmates who would discuss techniques over coffee after class, then as friends who discovered a shared love of hiking and classic films. When our friendship began evolving into something more, I was candid about my divorce and the trust issues it had left me with. Rather than being put off by my honesty, Sophia appreciated it. "Everyone has a past," she told me one evening, as we walked along the Charles River. "What matters is how we carry it forward. I don't need you to pretend those experiences didn't shape you. I just need you to be open to new experiences with me." Her words were like a balm to wounds I hadn't realized were still tender. With Sophia, I began learning how to be vulnerable again without fear of betrayal. We took things slowly, building a foundation of friendship and mutual respect before becoming intimate. When we finally did, it felt like a new beginning rather than an attempt to recapture something lost. 6 months into our relationship, Sophia and I were having dinner at my house when I realized I still had a folder of photos from my marriage stored on my laptop. Without hesitation or regret, I deleted them all, freeing the digital space just as I had freed the emotional space in my heart. "You know," I told Sophia that night, "I used to think happiness meant never having experienced pain. Now I understand it's about growing through the pain until it no longer controls you." She squeezed my hand in understanding, and in that moment I felt profoundly grateful for the journey that had led me to her despite its painful beginnings. Looking back now, 2 years after discovering those devastating text messages, I can see that Amanda's betrayal, as painful as it was, ultimately gave me the opportunity to discover my own resilience. It taught me about boundaries, self-respect, and the kind of love that builds up rather than diminishes. I learned that while betrayal cuts deep, it doesn't have to define you forever. That trust once broken can be rebuilt, not necessarily with the same person, but within yourself, and eventually with someone worthy of it. Most importantly, I discovered that sometimes the most painful endings clear the way for beginnings we couldn't have imagined for ourselves. The end of my marriage wasn't the end of my capacity for love or happiness. It was just the closing of one chapter before the opening of another. There's a certain poetic justice in the fact that the cake metaphor Amanda used to justify her betrayal has become a symbol of my recovery. I now understand that true happiness isn't about having your cake and eating it too. It's about learning to bake your own cake, finding joy in the process, rather than just the consumption. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? How did you find the strength to start over? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and renewal. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes our greatest growth comes from our deepest wounds.